I never had a guest on my live stream before, and how lucky was I that the very first one was Patrick Jones. Patrick has done work for Lucasfilm, Disney. He's done a ton of sci-fi and fantasy book covers. He's written several books on drawing from photographs, anatomy, painting. His Anatomy of Style online workshop has a new session every few months. I've taken it, and I can highly recommend it. All of his courses, really. I've done his classes through Poco, through his website. I think he has a couple on New Masters Academy. All of his stuff is brilliant, well worth it, especially if you love to draw and if you're interested in learning how to draw figures. And in this live stream, we talked specifically about drawing heads. We talked about anatomy, use of lost and found edges, shape design, movement. We talked about art books. Patrick did a few draw overs of submitted works, including one of my own, and so much more. So I hope you'll enjoy this, my very first interview with the great Patrick Jones.
A lot of experience behind me, and now I've decided to be the master of my own domain. And so I teach and draw and write. It's the Nirvana, John. It's the Nirvana. I do as I please. It's as
That's
simple
the
as that.
best. That's the best of all
Yeah,
possible futures, right?
it's just there. I mean, I had an idea. I just wanted to do what Frank Frazetta did. And a simple plan for me is the best plan. And I saw that he created a book of his art, sold the prints from it, and then just carried on his merry life. And I thought I can do that.
Yeah.
And it was very simple thing to do. Well, in hindsight, it was very difficult for a long time. Like every artist knows, you got your little childish dreams. And then, over time, over the process of it, maybe the dream slips a little bit,
Hmm.
but you're actually in the workforce now. You're doing stuff that you like, and you forget the dream a little bit because you're living a different kind of dream. And I think that flotsam and jetsam mindset has kept me in good stead because I was always happy whatever I did as long as I was drawing, and then get back to the dream again. So having that little, you gotta have a dream. It's Pinocchio, isn't it? You gotta have a dream. Was that who was that? Giuseppe?
Was Giuseppe?
I think it might have been, or maybe it was the little cricket Jiminy.
Oh, Jiminy Cricket.
I
I
think
think
Jiminy said you have to have a dream.
I think the dream
Oh,
too. It can be as vague or as specific as you want it to be, right? And just kind of move
yeah,
in that direction, and then it sort of morphs and evolves as you move closer to it. And the
yeah,
dream you started off with maybe is not always the same dream you end up with, but it ends up like a better one, a more refined version of that
yeah.
original dream.
Yeah, it's the open mindset. If you've got a closed mindset and you've just got that dream, it can be very frustrating. But if you're heading toward the dream and you keep your mind open to other possibilities, before you know it, you're working in the movie business. And you're going, I didn't see this coming. This is wonderful. So that was me. I just kept heading toward that path, and other paths opened on the way. And having an open mind meant that I could enjoy that too. And then eventually, to have the dream, really, you've got to establish yourself first.
Hmm.
Nobody's going to print an art book of mine until I'm a known thing. And that I didn't realize that. I just thought I'll just go to a publisher. You'll like my paintings, and you'll publish a book. You have to have a presence as well,
That's
but
right.
not anymore. You can print your own book if you want. It used to be frowned upon, but when you look back in history, some big writers did it. Like who was in the gutter but could see the stars? An Irish guy too. Just gone on
Oh
my head.
yeah, that's right. That was an Oscar Wilde, was it?
Oscar Wilde.
Yeah.
He was so frustrated with publishers that he published himself.
Hmm.
No, Oscar Wilde, he didn't have to prove anything, but he couldn't get a publisher. Spielberg has got a movie in production for 10 years and can't get anyone to distribute it. So you would imagine once you've had it,
It's shocking.
Francis, Francis Coppola couldn't get Megatropolis financed, so he had to use his own money.
It, it
And
it's
that
interesting
was,
how it used to be self-publishing was called like vanity press, and it seems like it's
still is.
flipping now.
Yeah.
And it's like you want to get a publisher like because of the cachet, right? But you can just self-publish your own work
Yeah.
just as easily in a lot of cases, at least.
You can. You can. The problem with the reason it's still called vanity publishing in a lot of circles is that when everyone does it, the quality when you spread it out is so low
Hmm.
that those that are actually worth publishing are lost in the melee. And so that's the problem with it. And so it still remains a problem.
Right.
But if you have a publisher pick you up, then obviously they've, because they have to make some kind of money from it, they've got to say, well, okay, this will sell. And it's a dollar sign now.
Right.
There's absolutely nothing.
There's
Yeah,
a bar that you've
there's a
you've
bar.
you've crossed, right?
That's right. And so it makes you more legit. Let's say you get published by a publisher.
We're
You can
talking.
self-publish like Oscar Wilde, and people will go, "Oh, it's okay, it's self-published," but we know he's already been
See, I
published.
had no idea that Oscar Wilde was self-published, so I feel a lot better now.
Not for everything, just for
Yeah,
his,
yeah,
his
yeah.
for his vanity projects.
It's vanity projects.
What he wanted to do, really, he just wanted to be an artist that wasn't commercial,
That's right.
and that's when he had to do it. That's why actors do indie movies between their Marvel superhero movies.
Hmm. Yeah, someone in
So
chat, Tiny Dragon on Fire, says self-publishing is great. It's incredibly punk. Things like
yeah,
webcomics and zines can create opportunity for folks on the fringes and marginalized folks to have their voices heard, right? You can.
it's democracy.
I just watched a thing yesterday, actually, from Japan. Apparently, zines, like all over the world, zines are becoming big again. But in Japan, I guess there's the big zine fests, and like publishers will go there looking at zines to try to find the new people they want to publish
Yeah,
because like, if you can do it yourself, then surely you can do it with the help.
John, that's a great segue. We were going to do what's in Patrick's cabinet of curiosities, right? Pick a book off the shelf.
Exactly.
No, I had a book in mind, but you just brought another one up. I'll just get it. So
All right.
if you can do some cabinet of curiosities music, I'll go get this book.
That's all I got.
Kept you hanging because I couldn't see the book because it wasn't
Oh
really
man, that
what I
book.
do.
You mean this one
So this
here?
one, have you got it?
I got it right here.
Wits End?
The Best of Wits End. Yeah,
The
I
best of
got
Wits
it.
End.
I got it on my shelf right behind me.
This was a
Wally Wood,
story.
right? His self-published work.
Well, it would, yeah. And this was a story of plan ahead or it'll be the end of you. And so what he did is oh, it's poor Wally. I won't open it because there's so much stuff on it that would get you canceled. But he promised everyone that bought that book an original sketch.
Did he?
And he didn't plan for how long that was going to take and how much cost it was going to be in postage. And
Sure.
it was basically ruinous. It was a silly, he didn't think smart enough. So that was the end of Wally Wood as far as making any kind of living. And he was the best.
Yeah,
He
this
was the
book.
absolute best.
Well, he published with Steve Ditko's in here, Art
Mm-hmm.
Spiegelman. Who else? Let me see. Jim Steranko, your old friend.
Strong. Oh, Jim.
P. Craig
Still around.
Russell, Howard Chaykin. Yeah, all these great artists were in here. Yeah, this is a fantastic book. There's some Frazetta in here too.
Yeah, they all knew him. So basically, it was Wally's calling, I'm in. So
Hmm.
that's the cachet, Wally, I mean, he was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant. But he didn't seem to have a business mind in his head. And for that, it was ruination.
Yeah, he had a
So there's a lot of
kind of a tragic arc, didn't he?
terrible, terrible, absolutely awful. Let's not bring the whole show down.
No.
Legacy, Frank Frazetta,
Yeah.
out of print. This publisher, Underwood, every once in a while you pick up a little gem from maybe a secondhand store or something. Underwood were, for my money, the best publishers. Their reproduction quality was
Hmm.
just off the charts, great. You know, had all the nice big plate.
Yeah.
If there's one thing that bugs me, and I don't like to be down on anything at all, is a ton of text and a little square artwork in the corner of an
Yeah.
art book.
It should be the opposite.
It should be the
Yeah, yeah.
opposite, yeah. But I do like to read it too. But keep it to the front and then give us the full plates, which they do over and over here.
Hmm.
And you can see how well that's been thumbed through,
Yeah.
you know? I wonder, let me see what the blue is, because that's obviously a favorite page. Let me have a look if will it get John canceled? That should have scary music. It will not. So this one, anatomically incorrect, but still marvelous.
Yeah.
There's breaking the rules for you. Look at how many abs he's got. There's breaking the
But
rules.
it's so exciting you wouldn't even notice if you weren't looking for it.
No, because he said, you know what? An extra set of abs will just make that rhythm all the more rhythmic.
Yeah.
Now, on the opposite end of the scale, Robert McGinnis The
Oh
Art of.
wow.
You can get this. This is a
That's
marvelous
still
book.
available?
It is, yeah.
Oh man, okay. I'm
And
opening a tab right now.
get that Robert McGinnis. I hope it is. Last time I
After this
looked.
stream, it won't be. None, all you in chat, don't go and buy this book until after I've had a chance to get mine.
That's
All
right.
right?
You're tied up.
That's right.
So yeah, to be honest, it always comes down to something else. I mean, he went on in his latter part of his life to do landscapes, which are still great. But for me, I haven't got so much interest in them because I
Hmm.
like the figure. But to show the figure, there's a lot of nudity in here. Well, there's one, you know. The way, if you saw the difference between the photograph and the art that came from it, you'd really know that it's more about it's not about copying. It's
Yeah.
about design.
We
I
were just
mean,
talking about finding your style earlier,
yeah,
and like, I feel people stress about it, but I was saying like, I think just drawing and your style will kind of emerge. And talk
yeah,
about style, Robert McGinnis.
yeah. I agree. I mean, let's just say, like, for instance, I love the color green. There's an instant thing, a thought. I like the
Hmm.
color green. I really add a lot of green to my work, more green than in other people's work. Automatically, that's a stylistic choice
Hmm.
and it marks my work. Now, if someone else chooses green too, you might go, well, both you guys, I don't know one from the other. But I'm also making a million other choices as far as how I draw a figure, how much fluidity I put into a figure. All of that stuff is your style. So my big tip for everyone is be selfish. Don't try and please others. Please yourself. They'll find you. It's a simple thing. I mean, look at the choice of orange there,
Right.
right? It permeates the entire artwork. He could just call that his orange period and do 20 of those, and you could sell a show out on it. He's just an amazing artist. So Robert McGinnis, an incredible artist.
And if you're
His
enjoying
figure,
yourself, it shows too.
oh, it really does. And also, his figures were 10 heads high. So there's another choice.
Right.
You see a Robert McGinnis figure, they're giants. They're absolute giants. Now, I don't think there's no nudity in that. So there's his model, right?
We got to be
She does
careful with
have,
that on Twitch, though.
yeah.
That's a little close, Patrick.
Is
There you
it?
go.
Well, she's not wearing
That's
a
a.
bikini.
I think Chuck got in trouble for drawing bikini clad.
Ah, come on.
Yeah, I know,
Really?
I know.
Good
We
God.
yeah.
Unbelievable. Well, let's put Robert McGinnis to the side. But
Get
he
your
was big in
smelling
the
salts out, chat.
yeah. He was big in the 60s. He was big in the 60s. And he did the James Bond posters.
Hmm.
So, I mean, they sold the movie as much as Sean Connery did. So there you go. So that's two books,
Right.
and I could share my screen
Yeah, let's
and
do
maybe
that.
do some drawovers. Now, this is from New Masters Academy, so it's worth talking since you're talking about noses. That, and I've been talking about this all week actually, because I've interviewed quite a few people, Jeff Watts and Joshua Jacobo from New Masters Academy. And we were talking about, people tracing, because I brought a Norman Rockwell up here, because we got to know the truth of things as well. You might look at Norman Rockwell and go, genius, what's the point? He traced tons of stuff. In fact, during the latter part of his career, it was all tracing, but he could draw. He could
Hmm.
really draw. Now, when you go into the professional arena, everyone's tracing. And that's
Hollywood
what that was
too.
just, yeah, everywhere. Drew Struzan. But the difference is, well, why didn't we have 20 Drew Struzans, 100 of
Hmm.
them? Because he knew how to draw and he knew how to design. Design probably more than anything. So learning to draw is absolutely essential. And they're selling machines now. It's the same old thing again. It's the artoscope, it's the projector, whatever they're selling. This is how the old masters did it. Not really.
Hmm.
It's how the old masters had one tool that they used. It wasn't what made them great artists. In fact, it was the ruination of many artists. In fact, it ruined, as far as I am concerned, Norman Rockwell's skill, because your skills deplete. And so anything after the 1950s Rockwell, it's a hit and miss for me whether you get a great piece of work. You're definitely going to get a polished piece of work and an incredible piece of work, but has it got any soul? Well, the soul was Norman for me, and the soul was sucked out by the tracing element that he leaned on more and more. So I'm going to bring some Rockwells up. Pre-50s, absolute genius. Couldn't be better. And you think, well, how good is he going to be when he becomes in his 50s and his 60s? Probably in his 40s by the time he started tracing too much. Got worse and worse. And so he just lost his skills because you have to draw all the time. I remember going to the Rockwell Museum and they had the whole Rockwell over in there, what they could have, because he did hundreds, thousands of paintings. But on the way out the door, I wish they hadn't done it because it was in chronological order. So you go in one door and you see his style emerge, and it gets really brilliant halfway through. And then it gets photorealistic, which I lose interest in a little bit. And then we move toward, and we come out the door at hit the last piece he did. And it was just sad. It was
Hmm.
really an awful piece of work. I mean, it can't be great. He's an older, he's practically on his way out, and he paints this last piece, and it was awful. I really think wish they hadn't put it there because it was the. I always say when you make a portfolio, make sure your best piece is on the end last
Hmm.
page, so that when they leave the portfolio open, they're still looking at the greatest thing you've ever done. And that's not how that museum was created. It was created so that you saw the worst piece, and that was the last last thing you remembered walking out the door. Still, I could do that. Do you know you kind of had that idea on the way out? But on that idea, I could do that. Anyone could do this. Look at it. So this is kind of what it looks like when you're tracing a photo, but I'm drawing it. Now, the difference is that I'm drawing with style. I'm changing whatever photographic reference I have on the fly. I'm tilting that ear back a little bit more, making the eyes a little bit bigger. But the techniques are in there that you know from working with me, Sean, that I'll take that eyelash and say that's where the nose will end. I'll take the eyeball and say that's where the lips will generally end because people have big mouths and small mouths, just a ballpark. But when you trace for too long, like I did in advertising, you come out the other end, you start to worry about drawing in public because you really don't believe you've got the skills anymore. So I stopped. I stopped doing all the tracing. Not entirely. If I have to do a big composition, for instance, I'll trace on the elements and then draw all day based on those. Really, what the old masters did is they gridded things out. And the equivalent of a grid now would be just a light trace of the big shapes so that you can transfer it onto a canvas that's actually the size of the platform you're working with. Otherwise, you'd be running off the end of the canvas. It's just too much math. But I can draw now. And in old money, if I had to draw that, which you've just seen from scratch, if I had to draw that in old money, meaning tracing, it would look horrible. It would look absolutely horrible. It wouldn't have these lovely lost lines here. It wouldn't have the choice of how much value was taken out and put in. It wouldn't have the choice of how much elegant line is in that neck, which wasn't in the photo reference. A million decisions as you draw. And that's what happens when you draw. You make a million decisions. While you're tracing, the only decision you're making is following a line. And that's detrimental to your art.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean you can't trace, but be very aware. Buyer beware. You buy an artoscope, it's already got distortion on it anyway. The camera's got distortion. So you're drawing a distorted image with a distorted lens, and you're going to put it on a canvas. And whether people know about art or not, they're going to see there's something wrong, and it's not gonna hit your heart.
You can often
So,
tell when something has been traced, and even like
oh
looking at old comics, you can see like,
yeah,
okay, well this figure, this whole page, like all these figures were drawn, from imagination, but this one here, this figure looks there's something different about it, and you can it's probably because it was traced, right? And traced maybe a
yeah,
little too
yeah.
closely to the reference, not
That's
loosely
right.
traced in and then kind of embellished.
And it's most likely going to be the most uninteresting piece, even though it's the most polished.
Yeah.
And when you're young, you go, "Wow, look at that! He's got so much better by that last panel." Really, he traced that one. But that was the reason another great artist, Al Williamson, was so slow because he used tons of reference. And he had all his mates, Frank Frazetta and all the rest, well, he would sometimes maybe, would pop up and they'd all pose for him. And so for every panel, he would have his friends pose. Very expensive. He had to get a camera, develop it. It's not like today where you just snap it. So here I had to do all of that. And someone said to Frank Frazetta, you know, you make it all up. Is that really true? Well, for the most part, yes, because the reason he gave was that tracing is too slow. It's much too slow. Now, to the untrained artist, you'd go, how can that be? Because it's already done for you, because you've made no design choices. Whereas Frank's just blazing a path of one drawing after another, and they're getting more fluid and more beautiful as he goes all the time. Whereas Al has to fight really hard to take that photo reference and make it his own, which he can do because he's a brilliant artist. He
Yeah.
can really draw well. But it was a path that was basically the path that became the general path of artists that followed him. Whereas before that, Jack Kirby, Frazetta, all the Flegels, apart from Al, were just banging the artworks out.
Yeah,
And
I think
because they could draw.
you draw a lot from reference, and then you have that in your head, and you can draw from imagination if you have that to
Yeah.
refer to, right?
Yeah, that's why I don't want to demonize it either. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with tracing, but you're not going to be able to draw like I've done there in one
Mhm.
hour,
Yeah,
a lovely rendered head that you really, here's the big
1 hour.
caveat. Yeah, here's the big caveat for me is that I did not enjoy any 1 minute underneath that light box.
Hmm.
It's called an artoscope. You go inside, it's roasting hot. I didn't enjoy 1 minute under those lights. And it would have taken me an hour to draw or more just to
Hmm.
trace the whole thing with no joy at all and a worse drawing.
Yeah,
So there's the power of learning how to draw
and it's
right there. You'll
stiffness.
enjoy, yeah, and stiffness. You'll enjoy everything you do, and
Yeah,
you'll be in the fresh air. You'll be outside if you want, you know? You'll have the windows open. You'll enjoy it, you know? But the thing is, I would say to most people, don't be dissuaded. I think a lot of people give up because the early stages look so awful. They look like a dog's breakfast, right? So how can that possibly be this? Well, we
yeah,
start with that. You
it's
know, it's simple
incredible.
to complex. Yeah, simple to complex. Soften it back. That's why I love charcoal and newsprint. Just
Hmm.
soften it back with your hand or tissue, anything you like, and you get another start at it. So basically, up to this point here, you could call that a trace right there, even though it wasn't trace. You could call that a trace. So I would say if you go any further than that and you continue tracing, you're not going to have a style. You're going to just have a trace.
Right.
But from here, everything I do now is built on value, on contrast, and taking a round thing and making it a straight thing. Anything at all that I need to do. Make the lips more voluminous. Who knows what? Change the eyebrow shape. Everything I choose at this point is it's joy. It's just constant joy and ends up with something you can be proud of and something that, if someone calls you up and say, you've hit the big time, we're going to fly you over to Europe to draw in front of people, you don't have
Don't
heart
have a panic
palpitations.
attack. Yeah.
Yeah, and start making excuses. I'd love to, but I've got another venue, which means you're going to watch Netflix. So,
Ursa Crafton wants to know how we both feel about grid drawing in particular, taking the image and breaking it up to draw the smaller sections.
yeah,
For me,
that,
I like doing the comparative analysis, like where like kind of draw a plumb line down from
yeah,
like you
me
said earlier,
too.
the eyelash, draw a plumb line down, draw a horizontal line, kind of I guess you could call it like an informal grid of sorts.
It is, yeah. I like big to small. So this was drawn live for a class, it has render in it, it has everything. There's a model there, there's a guy there. Didn't look anything like this because if I was
Hmm.
to try and get a likeness, that's a different discipline. So if I was to try and get a likeness, it would stiffen up because I'm too closely adhering to a likeness. Whereas if I go out like that nose, if you have more character to it, more gesture to it, I'm going to change it. So it doesn't end up looking like the model because it's not meant to. That's a whole totally different discipline, drawing a portrait. And that can be a wonderful life. But it wasn't of any interest to me because I like to design, I like to change it. So once you learn the big to small, for me anyway, because the grid method is totally valid, it's how the old masters did it. They just run strings through a block
Hmm.
and they'd grid their own canvas up in squares. So every string was a square
They had
and they
the
draw every shape.
that hanging
Yeah.
hole thing they looked through.
See that? I'm out. Do you see what I
It
mean?
doesn't seem very
I'm out.
fun.
I'm not going to walk around with that. I just it's not that it's embarrassing. I just
Hmm.
where's the fun in that? You know what I mean? And so you've stopped the connection between the drawing. And for me, the connection to the drawing is just supremely important. So the second I stick my thumb out, I think, well, just go and trace it then, if you're going to
Hmm.
do that. You'll learn a lot more by the side-side method. There's no doubt about that. You'll be a better artist, but it's still that. And what I find is that if I got a, imagine I haven't got a pencil. I did this yesterday. It's such a shame. I've got a pencil at hand. Let's say I have a pencil and I'm measuring one head. And I do this in my class. I say measure the head so you understand them.
Hmm.
And I do that. By the time I've got over to my drawing board and flip that around to draw that head, I can just do it. I can just look at the can just go, it's that size, I can actually see it.
That's a good
So
muscle to sort of work out too, right? Like
yeah,
the
fun to see
ability
it.
to look at something and do it with your eye rather than your hand.
Yeah,
Like
I think so.
that's a
Yeah,
skill that you can develop. It's not hard to do, and I mean, like it's not an insurmountable thing to learn how to look at that and go, okay, that's roughly that size compared to that, and then do it
yeah,
without sticking your thumb out and doing the actual measurement. It just maybe takes a little
yeah,
longer to get to
yeah.
when
And
you're
I
starting
think that,
out.
and yeah, and once you get to it, it's there for life. Whereas every time you do that, you're back to square one again because you got a new model, you got a new thing, you're measuring that thing.
Hmm.
Whereas you've seen me draw, John, if I'm doing a figure, I find the great trochanter, the hip bone, that's two halves. I can very easily break that into quarters. I can go up to the nipples, that's a quarter, down to the bottom of the bottom knee, another quarter. I've got four shapes now that I can fit a figure into that's standing up. And I can just keep breaking that down into bits all the time. And as a cautionary note, I break down the figure into halves and quarters and then heads, not heads first, because you end up with a big long figure and you're totally out of whack. So big to small for me is it's absolutely essential. You get my, I actually heard a little bit of your podcast before I jumped out and had some lunch. And you were talking about the eyes being the center of the head. It is really hard to see unless someone's bald,
Hmm.
and then you can see it actually quite clearly.
Hmm.
So for me, that would be the equivalent there of, just finding those parts like that. And then I'll go, well, from the eyebrow down to the bottom of the nose, where it meets, by the way, right there, not anything that dips below like that. Then
Hmm.
that's another half down to the bottom lip. Now look at that. See those quarters? Do you see it? You can see them pretty much plainly there. This is a half, this one. Now it's not the half where the eyes are. That's a different half. That's up there. I guess that's what confuses
Yeah,
people.
that
And I've
always
seen
threw
it.
me. Yeah, the
Yeah,
Loomis head they talk about the
yeah,
brow maybe, or they talk about the eyes. I can never keep I like for the longest time I couldn't tell if
yeah,
it was the eyebrow was the half part or the eye was the half part,
yeah,
and I would always try to remember it and then forget it, and my heads would be
yeah.
wonky.
Yeah, and I think that's why secondhand knowledge is dangerous too, because it was muddied like that. And people did say that it was just half, and then they went halfway down from the eye to the bottom of the nose. And now everyone had these little pug noses, and they couldn't work out why that happened when you have to come up a little bit. So we don't always get what we want. It would be perfect if the eyebrows were halfway. And they were done. We just did onto the nose and the bottom of the bottom lip. But drawing off heads, it's done. The main thing is this, that big ovoid. There's your main thing. And for me, that's eternal. Just getting that in there is all I need. And then I can start thinking about big shapes like this. And like you say, this is a tricky one here where you've got to think about perspective. You've got to think about, well, if the head's
Yeah.
5 eyes wide to this point and someone turns it a three-quarter, if we can forget about all that, it's now time to start understanding perspective and say, well, that eye's going to be a little shorter. An eye between here and there is no longer really that anymore.
Hmm.
It's only from the front. And that's where constant 100% mileage is the most important thing. Let's have a look up here. I'm trying to find user-friendly ones for this. Here I'm drawing eyes that are five, or a head that's 5 eyes wide, and I'm just working with eyes. So I'm just doing eyes. I'll let that run in the background so that people at least can see something. That's from my wizardry course. So, is there any questions, John? Because I talk a lot
Well, I had
before we.
I had a question, but any questions in chat, please do put them in. And that wizardry course, by the way, is fantastic. I think I'm halfway through it right now.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
and
lot of hours.
it's a lot of hours. I think it's of the courses of yours that I've done, it's like it's the best one. But it's the most recent one, so naturally it
Yeah.
would be the best one. And I'm getting a lot out of it for sure. I Could you talk a little bit about shape design? I don't think I've heard you talk a lot about shape design. It's something that I think I want to try to. I don't know. I find approaching how to learn or how to do shape design. Is it intuitive, or is there a way to kind of approach it?
That's a brilliant question, John, because let's say we go down one idea of thinking. And because it's in a book, you find, okay, that's an authoritarian voice in there. Because they
Hmm.
used to be that very dry academic books. And so when they talked in, let's say, eloquent verbiage. You believe they were very smart, right? But I'm all of about Einstein. The If you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it fully yourself. So there was a lot of that, I think, where people would just they would bamboozle you with verbiage because they really truly didn't understand it themselves. So for me, when I was writing my books, I kept it to a conversation rather than I'm the boss here, listen to me. And for me, when it comes to shape design, we can break that down into big bits and small bits. And so let's say we've learned to draw the head. I'm just talking about the eyes here. Then we get down into smaller volumes. For me, that first idea where you had to work with boxes
Mhm.
and then you talked about gesture, still to this day doesn't work for me. So if I draw boxes, I'm in box world. And it's very hard for me to get gestural after that because I'm already drawing boxes. And so now I go, okay, we can put gesture on that. It's too late. My hands, the memory of my hands are all about straight lines and boxes. And I can't now switch over. So what I did was devise a different idea, which was gestural structure. So every box I draw has a curve to it. A slight curve doesn't make a difference anyway, because a head's not a box, but you can draw it as a box to begin with. Then you put the gesture of curves on it. So why not start the head with a curve? Why not make it a big ovoid upside down egg? Why not do that? And so that's my whole idea in philosophy is that we build with the two main things that make art, gesture and structure, at the same time. And it's not hard. It's actually easier as far as I'm concerned, because the main thing for design with me is what's on the other side. Notice as I'm drawing here, I'm going from one side to the other. If I'm drawing an eyebrow, I want to know what his friend's doing. If I draw an eye, I want to know what the other eye's doing. And so I go back and forth on that. And it works incredibly well. At the beginning, it doesn't because you're so terrified. And I know that everyone's going to understand this, that you stay in a little corner until you're safe enough to come out of that corner and do another corner until you're safe enough to do another corner. And so you're not thinking holistically. But the second you think holistically, it's very easy to see the simplicity of it. Two big elements. Now that element of the bottom of the eye's got a straighter line to it. Let's do both at the same time. You can see it very clearly there. Is my cursor showing, John?
Yep.
You can see this is a straighter line here, and that's a more curved line up there.
Mm.
See that? So what's on the left here are ordinary eyes, the way you would trace or the way you'd copy. Over here are fantasy eyes. They're exactly the same thing with a little bit more gesture. That's the secret. A little bit more gesture, a little bit more mystery, a little bit more of you. What do you want to see? Now, the ordinary eyes are fine. You know, they're ordinary eyes. What more do you want? Well, this is what I want up here in the corner. That's what I want. I want extraordinary eyes. If any one of these in the left-hand side is going to be a sorcerer, it's not really going to, I'm not going to believe it. It's going to be like pantomime. Oh, they're playing a sorcerer. I want a sorcerer. I want those eyes to scream out. You don't have to even think about it. This is a sorcerer now. You're in trouble here. These eyes are going to burn into your soul. Look how fast they went in the time we were talking. I never draw fast, ever. That was another thing that I thought was a terrible hindrance to me, that I was trying to draw as fast as the masters because I thought that was the secret. They weren't drawing fast. They just became faster with their decisions. That's all. They were all drawing at their own speed of thought. And that's all I'm doing there. So one of the big no's for me, I don't like rules, but I would say don't draw faster than your thoughts. You know, enjoy every line, enjoy every shape, and you'll draw even if the even if the drawing is a disaster, you'll have enjoyed doing it and you'll enjoy doing the next one as well. And then eventually it'll all gel. It'll all come together with mileage. Mileage is the most important thing. There you go. That's me blabbering away. So
And you say that you talk a lot, which I have to say to those of you watching. One of the things I like the most about Patrick's instructional videos and stuff is that it's like this on the screen, right? The hand is moving the whole time, the drawing is happening the whole time, but there's also voiceover that's happening the entire time as well. And there's so much that you kind of soak in just by listening to the narrative of what's happening. I always like I draw along, so as your hand is there moving, my hand is also moving, kind of doing the same marks as you.
Yeah.
And then listening to, you know, the getting the feedback in two ways, right? Getting the feedback from the hand and getting the feedback from the narrative, I think, is a really, really important way to learn this kind of thing, especially anatomy, something that is so
Yeah.
complex. And you talk a lot about mnemonics and things like to remember, and you talk
Yeah.
about what did you say? It soaks in. Blanking on the word
Oh,
now.
osmosis.
Osmosis. That's the
Osmosis.
one, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I've found that I've learned a lot of names of anatomical stuff, not by looking in anatomy books and trying to memorize them, but just by hearing you say them over and over again. Although
Yeah.
somehow I couldn't remember osmosis.
It's a hard word. It's because it's not in general usage. It's just not there. Yeah,
But the way that the videos are, like it's the best, the perfect balance. Like it's I find it relaxing but also engaging. There's so many videos people draw and they'll say, okay, well, I'm gonna draw a face now and I'll tell you how to do it. You kind of start like this, and then there's no talking for 20 minutes and it's just the hand
yeah,
going, and it's harder to stay focused on that.
yeah.
And
Yeah, and the best stuff's happening when they're not talking because they're so deep in concentration. That's the stuff we want to hear.
mhm.
And that's the reason I made all those
You
movies.
draw them first, right, and then you record the voiceover after the fact.
Yeah, I,
So
I
you
I
can
can do
focus
it
on the
both.
drawing and then you can talk,
Yeah,
focus on the
that was
talking.
just basically, it wasn't about I couldn't concentrate because I did a whole course for the new masters where I talk and draw at the same time. It's no bother to me at all. It was just necessity. It was just simply this, John. I'm sitting in a room right now talking to you. I've got a great mic now. I didn't always have a really good mic, and I'm right over the flight path here after 11 o'clock in the morning. It was just solely that.
Mhm.
I only had 2 hours to record a voice. And so I didn't want to stop drawing all day because I'd have to be drawing and talking at the same time. So I just made a decision to draw in silence and then find a quiet spot and record the voiceover after. That's all it was. There's nothing else but
Well,
that.
I found it really effective.
Oh, I
Um,
think it's effective too. It gives me the chance to be totally in the moment of drawing and then be totally in the moment of describing the drawing as well. Because you can fall into that trap where obviously here's the best part and you just don't talk. You
mhm.
go, oh, I'm really enjoying this, and you forget the students in the room. So that's the kind of thing as well. But yeah, that was the reason for it. There was no other reason for it. I just continued the tradition of it because it because really if you did have the birds, which I used to have, I used to do it. And the birds would come on and it was really nice and everything. But
Mhm.
some people get distracted by it. I mean, there's parakeets out there right now singing. My old mic would pick that up. I don't
Right.
think this one is. But what I've done is built a sound studio onto the house, which is proofed. And I just close the door and I can
No,
record
no Australian
voiceover all day.
wildlife seeping through.
No, all day long. And it makes me a bit sad because when I'm down there, it's so soundproofed. What I do, it's so bizarre. I put on Australian soundscape on just on a YouTube clip of
Yeah,
birds
yeah.
singing so I don't forget that I'm in Australia because it's just silence in there. And so I do that. And then when I'm recording, I turn that off. It's weird. It's weird. Because I love where I am. I love the nature of it, the actual nature of the nature. I love that too. But
Um,
yeah, I should be over stuff, shouldn't I?
oh yeah. And while you're setting that up, there's a few comments. Crochet likes
Yep.
the linger over your lines. That she likes that comment you made earlier. The linger over your lines, right? Think about them
Yeah,
as you're
yeah.
putting them down. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, Ursa agrees with the idea of not drawing fast in your thoughts. This is interesting. Ursa said that she had a past teacher told her that she needed to draw faster than her thoughts.
Yeah,
Uh, and she thought, well, the teacher's been doing it longer than me.
yeah,
Like, I need to do it slower to get there, right? To build up to it. Like, I'll get
yeah,
there. I'll get to the point where I can draw as fast as my thoughts someday. But as a student, like, linger over your lines, right?
yeah. Well, I can understand what that teacher meant. Maybe it wasn't explained properly,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess it could have been two reasons. One of the reasons might be you're thinking too much and therefore your drawing's starting to stiffen up. It could be that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do draw faster than my thoughts for a good reason every once in a while. And that's to get chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm doing an abstract background, I draw a little faster than my thoughts because I don't want to make those shapes become something where I go, oh, I like it, the shape of it now. I
Mm-hmm.
want it to be totally random because I learn from students too. And one of the things I learned from students mostly when I was teaching is just how fearless they were because they didn't know the unknown. They had
Mm-hmm.
no idea that this was going to be a calamitous idea if you draw a figure like that. But what happened was they drew really, really interesting figures. The legs were too long, the heads were too squat, and it was really interesting. I went, that I actually like that. I like that better than a side-sized figure that's perfect because
Hmm.
everyone's done that. So it became very interesting to see, and I thought I really like that. I like that a lot. So it
So
depends
would you
what you're looking
say
for.
situationally, pick your moments?
Yeah, well, I would say, John, go deeper and just say, do it for you. Say, I like it, and that's that. So if anyone ever tells you, I think you got to be very wary if anyone ever tells you you have to do it this way,
Hmm.
because that's a closed mindset. So if you have to do it that way, why is the reason for that? So that you become like the other student that's been told exactly the same thing, and now everyone's doing it the teacher's way, and the teacher, is going to create these little eggs to go out into the world, and you go, oh, you're from that school
Hmm.
because your work looks like the teacher from that school. So I'm a big believer in that the knowledge I have is flexible. And that if I say, here's the greatest way to start this, you can then take your skills as meaning what you love. I mean, you started drawing for a reason, and the reason was love because kids don't know economics. When my dad was giving me the offcuts of wallpaper to draw on the back of, I wasn't going, this is going to make me a living. I was just drawing. I was
Hmm.
just drawing for the love of it. And he just kept throwing those scraps of wallpaper to me. He was happy for me to be quiet. So, in that moment of love and concentration, I mean, there was nothing nicer. And I want that. I want that for the rest of my life. And we get to a point where we're 12 years old. So I always think about 12 because for me, it was that time.
Hmm.
We start to go, oh, I have to learn how to draw better than this. And then you start copying how other people draw. And then you lose the love of what you're doing. And a lot of it came from what I think was rigid method. Like, for instance, cross hatching is a big one for me. When I see cross hatching, like this is a lovely drawing here, because there's not the cross hatching academia in it. And
Hmm.
if you look at Frank Frazetta's work, there's practically no cross hatching in his work at all. But if you were, let's say, a teacher that really was just working with rote ideas, they go, that's cross hatching. And I would say, show me the cross hatch in it. And there's very little of it, and it's only in the shadows. So he followed the form. All the greats followed the form. Do I have like I don't want to get you canceled, but I mean I love that, for instance.
Hmm.
I love that because to me that's someone that has sat down and honestly drew what they felt, and it came out, and the colors are different than you know you would like an art director would say, I don't know about the colors. It's not going to sell books. They need to be more punchy, right? And so that kind of thing would be another anchor for you. You'd go, oh, it has to be punchy. And then at the end of the day, you are pressured into drawing the way you don't want to draw, or you
Hmm.
never felt like you would draw. So I love that because of the freshness of it. It's a really fresh drawing. I can help the artist that did this to draw with more freedom by giving more and more ideas that they can be more free with. So
Yeah.
the freedom comes from having a method that's flexible. And then you can go, I really like what I drew here. Maybe you might say to yourself, I wish I knew how to do this again rather than get lucky, maybe. And you would hold on to what made it good. And maybe you'll just keep drawing the same thing over and over because it was a lucky strike. You definitely don't want that. And that's where a flexible method comes in. You go, you don't have to get a lucky strike. I can show you how to
Hmm.
draw this head at every angle, and it'll always look like your style.
Also, Patrick, I want to say a couple of comic book
Yeah.
artists, including the artist whose work you were just talking about, the submitted work. They were talking about the
Yeah.
difference between like the speed needed to do comic books and finding that
Oh, yeah.
balance between being deliberate and moving quickly. And
Yeah.
Plumsink, who submitted that drawing that you were just talking about, I think
Oh,
mentioned
yeah.
the importance of planning ahead, so
Yeah.
that you can do things quickly. And I think that when you talk about starting from simple to complex, that planning, I think that's in the same kind of category, right? Like the planning, you're saying, here's the big shape. I've got this planned out, this simple thing, and now I can work within the confines of these larger forms and start to refine them more
Yeah.
easily instead of going back and erasing a million times and kind
Yeah.
of in a haphazard kind of a way.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's a million ways to do it. We already talked about how Al Williamson was slowed down by using a tracing method to get his comic books done. And he did very well, but he really had a hard, long life, Al Williamson, because he had to really rely on his drawing skills, less because of the tracing, and then spent more time taking photography,
Hmm.
which would have been a big chunk out of his day. I mean, there's loads of reference of him with his mates, like I say, Frank Frazetta. Most because of Frank Frazetta's fame, we are able to see those photographs. Or they would have been hidden from history. You know, they would have been just another pile of reference materials in someone's drawer. But you see them in Frank Frazetta's book. And then you see the Al Williamson drawings based on them. Now, those guys from that period, to draw fast, what they really wanted to do was work for what we call the slicks.
You might want to
And the
take this
slicks,
picture down, by the way, Patrick. I don't know if this is a little racy for
no kid, you're
George.
kidding me. Good Lord.
Top left, I might.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
They'll
Well,
shut the stream. The stream will just end. So everybody,
is that how it happened?
if the stream just
Good
ends, you know
Lord.
why?
Good gracious.
I
Yeah,
know, I know. It's ridiculous, but
well, that artist you just saw there, so he would work for the Slicks, which
mhm,
meant that it was a big commission. You know, like for instance, when I worked in publishing in England, if you got a book jacket, it was honest work, it was good pay, it was good money. But if you got a commission from the Radio Times, I know it sounds so vintage, doesn't it, the Radio Times, but it's still called that. And it was because it's been one of the longest magazines in history.
mhm,
It used to just be, here's what's on the radio tonight. And then television came out. And then the Radio Times, there's practically, in fact, I don't think they have any radio in it anymore. It's just all television. And so the big commission was the Christmas edition because it was a double issue and because it had the BBC in it. The BBC showed movies and still do this day without ads. So it was like owning Netflix. It's like having Netflix. You still had to pay a license fee that people are angry about because it's compulsory if
mhm.
you've got a TV. You know, you authoritarianly being told if you've got a TV, you better pay a license. So there's a million funny stories about it, but I won't go into them. But the Radio Times, if you got the Radio Times cover commission, a fortune. You could go on holiday to the States. You could, you know what I mean,
Mhm.
from one painting if you got that cover. Comic books, boom, poverty stricken.
Right, right.
Always have been, unless you own your own IP or unless
Unless you were in the newspaper strips back in the day, right? If you're Hal
newspaper strips.
Foster,
That was the big money.
Charles
Hal,
Schultz.
Hal, Hal Foster was as famous as a movie star
Hmm.
with Prince Valiant. The drawings were amazing.
Yeah,
And you think, how can he make a living from that? Well, it was because he was in the trades, they were
syndicated,
called. So
right?
he syndicated, yeah. And so every newspaper that ran that strip had to pay him something. So I know we're talking economics now, but if you wanted to make money, you got into the newspaper. And then you got a continuous stream of revenue because it was your IP.
Hmm.
You could share it with someone would write the story, and you would, but he did it both. He did the drawings and he did the artwork. So he was mega rich. He had servants and stuff in a mansion. So, and when they came to make the movie, which was horrific, it was a terrible film, he got the biggest paycheck in his history of art. I think he gave him $250,000 or something in
Wow.
one day, equivalent of today anyway, in
Yeah.
one paycheck. And he gets to go to
Tiny
the premiere.
Tiny Dragon on Fire says the current base
Yeah,
advance for a graphic novel in the U.S. today is below the poverty line.
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And
So
you
it's
know
not
what?
always the same for comics, right? The artists who draw
Yeah,
the hardest stuff. I always think
yeah,
like a comic artist is like you have to be able to draw anything out of your imagination quickly. It's like the
yeah,
hardest putt in all of the arts.
yeah. It's the toughest gig, but boy, can they draw.
Yeah,
And so they could supplement it. I mean, lots did. Look at Jim Steranko and
sure.
John Buscema and those guys. I
You
mean,
sell
they
the
loved.
original art too.
There's another gigantic story.
Yeah.
Marvel kept the rights, and so John Buscema never made a cent out of his drawings beyond the paycheck, and so he could draw really fast. Jim Steranko was a different animal. You know, he was always savvy. But what both of them did was they'd go into advertising and draw for advertising. And that way they get paid a fortune. And then they could supplement drawing comic books because they had advertising work. And it's still to this day. That's what I did for 15 years, worked in advertising. And I only did it to pay a mortgage, to pay for things while I was seeking out the holy grail of painting book jackets, which didn't pay enough, would have just paid enough to give me some kind of lifestyle if it was constant. Like Dave Seeley said, do the math.
Hmm.
You know, if it takes me a week to do a book jacket and it pays this much, and then you've got to be commissioned and then you've got to wait for the next one. Let's take a week out in between 2 weeks. So it's 3 weeks you get them two book jackets. If you're really fast, a lot of people spend a month on a book jacket. It's their passion. So they get 12 commissions a year. That's poverty. You can't live on that. You cannot live on that. And so you need to have something else. And so, because I grew up in poverty, it didn't bother me. I was a risk taker all the time because I went, did I have a lunch today? That's all I need. And so I had a great strength to me. I was fully armored because I
Hmm.
didn't need anything.
I always
But
think
the
of it
more,
as I have like a bunch of lines out, right, or a bunch of drips in the bucket. Like
yeah,
I've been full time for 10 years, and it's
yeah,
always been like a little from here, a little from here, a little from here, a little from here, and it adds up.
yeah.
And it's and
Streams.
every
Yeah,
month is different too, right? Some months it's more from
yeah,
this area, some months it's more from that. It's kind of the exciting and unstable part of life as an
yeah.
artist.
Feast or famine. It always has been. It's always been like that.
We
And
should
you
do
get trapped in
some.
it.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Patrick. Go on.
We should. No, go ahead. I'll do a little draw over here of why I think this is so great, by the way. And I'll point to a lot of things. But yeah, you keep the questions coming, John. Were you going to say something too?
I was gonna say we should do some drawovers.
Yeah. Let's look
Um,
at
yeah, let's do that.
let's look at Sargent. I'll tell you why I think this is so brilliant. First of all, it's a quick painting, and I can tell that right away. You can see the scrubbery going on in here. That's a very thin wash right there. I know for a fact that he painted this live because I have a brilliant book here called Sargent in Spain. And he saw this model. I think she was just a villager, but she came along and posed for him, you know? Imagine what it's like for an artist to suddenly, let's say, give you 50 US dollars and your family makes that in 6 months,
Hmm.
something like that, right? Whole family's obviously behind it. What a brilliant face. You know, you can't get better than that. And the innocent too, the innocence of it. This is not a professional model. And so they have the face of someone that is totally genuine. You know, there's been no fashion shows or anything to corrupt this look. So she's amazing. But look at here's a million things I love, right? Now, when I started out and I had to draw hair, I would have drawn every strand in there. All we're seeing here is darkness to there and then a softness to another value. And that's it. And it really does make a beautiful thing out of hair that would look horrible and greasy if you put everything into it. So how much can you take out and make it work? Now
Hmm.
you might say, well, if he just does that, it's going to look flat. No, look at this here. Do you see that little halo? That little aura around the side here, this little soft corona of warmth. That's actually how our human eyes see hair. If you look at someone and they're being lit by the sun from the back, you're not going to see all that detail, but you will see that little corona. So the advantage that the likes of Sargent had working from life is they saw life as it was. They didn't see the flattened camera version of life. They didn't see the monocular vision of life that flattens everything. They saw life and could really see the lost edges because everything's crisp in a camera. And if it's not crisp, then they put on the bokeh and everything's really faded out in the background, blurred. And then like horrible zoom, when you put on, you don't have a green screen, you put the blur on and your ears disappear. It's that kind of look to your camera. It really doesn't see the edges like we see them. I'm looking at myself here now. I'm as sharp as a,
Hmm.
a tech all the way around. I don't see like that. This is a lens problem here. You see my pure white, and just on the corner of that white, there's a black line. It's not how my eye sees. It doesn't see a black line. There it is. We just accept it. We just accept it. And then if you paint like that, you're painting a camera's view of the world. Look at the beauty of this. Look at these values. And you don't need a soft edge to show a soft edge. He has just simply reduced the values in there as opposed to here. So there's less darks and less lights in there. And
Say
it
that
gives
again, Patrick. You don't need a soft edge.
the you don't need a soft edge to show a soft edge.
Hmm.
So he's reduced the values here. Now he has put a lost edge in here on the ear.
Hmm.
Do you see it?
Yeah.
So that's a soft edge. That's a lost edge. The camera can't do that. And so automatically we can see a human eye here and a human touch to it. It's actually enhanced the idea of that and made it more. And so now we're seeing more human eye. We're going, look here. But let's say you haven't got the skills to put a soft edge in and maybe you're just frightened of it. Well, there's your answer. I mean, there's a lost edge there, right here. That's soft. That's a soft edge. I can tell he's blurred that with a soft brush. But over here, the values are just lowered. That's all there is to it. And it feels like a soft edge. This is a very hard edge
It's
right
kind
here. You
of
can actually see the line of it.
sfumato, like a kind of like an atmospheric perspective, right? On the
It
face.
is. That's a perfect word for it, Jonas. Sfumato. That's what it is. It means smoke in Italian.
Hmm.
So the smoke didn't drift over the side, but it's inside the face. I've got a perfect example. I was talking about it the other week on another thing when I was doing this fantasy wizardry course. Let me just find it. Find the exact one. Is it just hidden there? There. So if you look at that face there, I was doing this on Proco, so that's where I premiered this thing. If you look at just that pencil drawing, right? The lines in here, there's some soft lost edges and stuff, but this entire value system in here, now we've got a totally lost edge there, but this entire value system here is totally different from this entire volume system here, and they're only an eye distance apart. But look at the beauty of it. Look at the romance of it. That's an artist's choice right there. If I did both of those eyes the same, and that's what AI would do, AI would just duplicate that idea over, it would lose the human touch. It would look like, once again, everyone else's work. It's just that little moment of asymmetry. And asymmetry for me is not just one eye is bigger than the other, which it should be slightly,
Hmm.
because no one has exactly that symmetry that you get from, once again, AI. So there's asymmetry. Both those eyes are a little different. And so that automatically feels like the human touch. Let's take the value system and make that asymmetrical. Now you've got the human touch multiplied.
That's some
And
4D
on
chess right there.
it is, it's 4D chess
Yeah.
right there. It's exactly what it is. And you can see it even in the shadow. You know, we think of a sharp drop shadow in a sunny day. Well, let's soften a little bit of it. Once again, just like you saw with Sargent there, that's still a hard edge,
Hmm.
but it's not that black line. It's a hard edge with a soft value inside the hard edge. So it has changed its on its way down.
Yeah, when I was studying Alphonse Mucha, another one of those study streams,
Yeah,
one of the big things from that, the takeaways was how many different ways there are to achieve contrast and how to use them in various combinations to get different feelings, right? Like
yeah,
and so what you're talking about is how many different ways can we achieve a subtle asymmetry? You
yeah.
know, how many
How
different
many?
strategies are there in the whole practice, in the whole way of making art to do this thing, right? And that's like the complexity of art and the beauty of it is that there's so many different ways to do the simplest of things, and you can pick and choose which ways you like, or you can mix them and match them in different ways, right?
Yeah,
And there's so much possibility there. It's just so exciting, and seeing something like you just described, using that subtle
yeah,
value structure for this eye and that's this eye, like the difference between it. I mean, it just it makes my head feel bigger just hearing you
yeah,
talk about it. It's so exciting.
yeah. And that's another thing as well, John. I get a lot of people that are retired in my class. They come to my class because they've been advised by people that know how the brain works that you got to puzzle things out now.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you'll lose your faculties, your mind. And so they come in to keep their mind fresh. Now they can do crossword puzzles. They can do all kinds of things. They can read. They can write. But how beautiful is it to draw? There's a million puzzles in there,
Hmm.
a million, and they're all joyful, every single one of them. So I get that. I get a lot of people coming in to sharpen their mind in a beautiful way, which is this. It'll
Yeah.
keep your mind sharp all the way through. So, but the method is still there. As I draw, I think probably there's a couple of definite anchors that I go to every time, and one of them is big to small.
Mm.
If I do a small thing and then do a big thing, it's doable, but automatically I'm on a wonky set of wheels. But if I'm always going big to small, like the big old void for the head, and then put the next biggest thing in, it's really quite easy for me to do that and continue to do that. I don't have to be a complex thinker to do that. They always say, you can't judge an elephant its intelligence by how it climbs a tree, because you would just think it's a dunce, right? And so I was thought of as a dunce because I had no interest in math at all,
Hmm.
at all. And so if I've no interest in it, I'm going to appear simple because that kid can't add two things together. Yeah, when I went to work in a pub, I had to start doing math and became very good at it because I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed that this made sense to me now because it wasn't, it wasn't numbers and then letters. I remember coming into the class and they were doing algebra and I went, did I miss a week? Do you know? And I never caught it. Never, ever again. We're adding A's and B's now. Never got it. But once it was 6 pints at a certain price, which was tricky, 148, I could do it. And I went, I can do this. I did it this morning. I had to work out 10 students,
Selling
three
pints this
hours.
morning.
Yeah, well, I had to do another kind of pints. I had to work out how much time can I give a student,
Hmm.
10 students over 3 hours, and worked it out very quickly as 18 minutes.
Hmm.
In old terms, it was just flat paper and numbers. Not a clue, not a clue. But once I can visualize things and a clock, I can do it. I can do anything. So we're visual people. So let's have a look. So this is you, John. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I've been doing I just went to like Pixabay or one of those free photo reference sites, and I just put in,
Oh yeah.
face, and I've just been going through the entire. It gave me like 200 pictures. So every couple nights I draw a new one. So I sent you the most recent three that I've drawn.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing I love about it right away is that it has the Einstein idea to it. How much can you take out and still tell the story? If you can tell it simply, then there's a lot of complex in those being taken out that nobody has any interest in anyway. So let's tell the story in a simple way. That's not a rule, but I love it. And let's go back to comic books. When Jack Kirby was the king of comics, I loved it. When John Buscema was the king of comics, I loved it. When he was inked by Alfredo Alcala, and it was so complex, I still loved it because both artists, they shared a joy of form. I think what happened after that is there was render for the sake of it. And so all through the 80s and 90s, the render went off the charts. And it really all I saw was render, and it just
Yeah.
depressed me. So I was on. I went on. And then, we're both fans of Mobius, John, right?
Yeah.
He can put the most complex thing on a panel with the minimal of line, and you still think you're in a world peopled by hundreds and thousands of people with nary an extra line needed. And it is an absolute joy to look at. It's just so beautiful.
That's something
So
you
a lot of
talk
people,
about. You talk about
yeah,
make it look easy, right? People
yeah,
people
make it look
think
easy.
people think it was easy. They don't see
Yeah.
all the work that went behind it, right? And then it makes it even like that much more, I don't know, that much more enjoyable to look at.
Yeah, nobody wants to see the cogs and wheels turning. You think you do. When you're very young and
Mhm.
you're impressed by detail, you think that you're enjoying this. And then you start drawing, and then you start drawing like that, and it becomes hard to get out of bed to do that because you know how much of a chore it's going to be. And you've missed something. You've missed the idea that this is supposed to be drawing. It's not supposed to be render. Now I'll render my heart out. I can't show you render because it's got flesh in it. But I have just put out another course, and it is the power of osmosis. I
Mhm.
just launched it with Proco the other day, and that's 15 hours. I kept saying it was 14. There's math for you.
Well,
So
that
you get an
means
extra hour.
everybody gets a free hour then.
You get a free hour you didn't
Yeah.
even see coming. So I've done 15 hours of drawing the power of osmosis.
You talk about
And
render
so,
hell.
yeah,
That's
render
that's
hell.
the worst of the hells, right?
It's the worst hell because even you don't know what you're doing. So at the end of the day, you're confused.
Hmm.
So you're lost in the weeds of it. But the complexity that went into drawing this simply, I mean, it's all in there. It's a hard one to draw over because it's completely black and white.
Hmm.
Let me see if I can put a gray over the top of it. All right. Now, what I love about it, of course, is the simplicity of it. Now, what did you find, John? What did you find difficult about it? And we could start from there as a draw over.
Well, I always find the like I was saying earlier, and I think when you first joined, that space on the far side, that shape, there's like that triangle shape of the cheek, kind of there under the
Oh, yeah.
eye, behind the nose. Finding the right shape and size, the right proportion of that bit there always trips me up. And then behind the Let me see. Like, easier for me to point it out here. Here, like this part
Oh yeah,
always
that's a
trips me up,
tricky.
right? And
It's
and
really
I think
tricky.
at that angle in particular,
Yeah.
be tricky.
Yeah, well, that's why I always think about this is when you get into anatomy. That's why I always think about the orbicularosaurus. So if we think about it, it's really this shape. It really feels like that. And it goes around like this. So I think anytime you see a face disappear like that, like this, can you find a way to just add a little bit? Let's take this here. Can you find a way to just add a little bit of that orbicularis back in again so that it feels a little bit more like this?
And then avoiding
There. And
that
see,
the tangent with the nose and the side of the cheek
and
too, right?
yeah, and avoiding the tension. That's a very scrappy, scratchy way I've done there. But that's what I'm always looking for. I'm always looking for that idea that we have basically a tennis ball shaped like this. And you can see it in those drawings that we looked at that you were doing, that we are going around the corner here. And so that we can call that a chin at that point. We can call that a cheek at this point. And then the eyes are up here, right? So like a little frog character. So what you've got to say here now is because we're going around the corner like that, then this side of the mouth has to be shorter than this side of the mouth here it's going around this corner like that. And right away, you know how to draw a pair of lips in perspective, right? But understanding where that there's a ball shape in there, then we've got to watch we don't draw an older woman with no teeth because that's where the teeth live. The teeth live in there. So I mean, this is tangent hell right here. This is always and always will be tangent hell. The second I turn my head like this, I'm going, okay, not bad. So if you watch my head, not bad, not bad. Stop, stop. Oh no.
It's,
Oh no. That is 2D hell, right? So my nose can't go past that in someone's mind when they're drawing. They'll go, can his nose not pass that? Is that another dimension? His nose can't go past that cheek? And then when you turn around like that, all right, we're back in 3D world again. So the second you get close to your tangent, your drawing's going to look really odd because it's an illusion of 3D. So I always do that. I say, can I just sneak a bit of orbicularis oris curve in there and it'll make her softer. It's a tricky one because you're going to have to move that lip around a little bit as well.
yeah, will you add that even if it's not in the reference, just for the
Yes,
success of the
well, that's the
drawing?
thing. Exactly. It's the success of the drawing. That's a good way to put it. You add it in. And another thing as well is because the head is curved like this, when you're drawing eyebrows like that, this one on this far side, if you're
Mhm.
having trouble with this far side, just the very fact that we're thinking of the head going like that, that eyebrow should be a little up compared to the other eyebrow. So this, it's very subtle, should be up a little bit more, just a touch,
Mhm.
because we're going around the corner. So if the two of them are starting to look like, if the two of them are starting to look like you're looking straight ahead, like this, then you've lost the idea of the curve. So
Right.
the curve doesn't show right away when you're looking straight ahead. It doesn't show. It only shows when you start to do the 3/4. And then you can see, if you look very subtly, the eyebrow on this side is going up a touch. And now they both look kind of straight. And it's those tiny little bits of minutia that catches on all the time. And so that's why you have to draw lots and lots. Let's see if I can get a 3/4 view here. We've done one. See, there's a complete side view. And that's where you really see the eyebrows go up. You see that? You can really feel it going up even more because it is heading on the upward
Hmm.
trajectory, especially looking up at the figure too. One of the hardest things to do is to draw the figure looking up because you've got to really think of the dimension then.
Yeah.
So we're all very used to drawing a figure from straight ahead. And but with the simplest of shapes, have a look, especially looking back on this, those shapes right there, even though they look complex, they started very simply. So they started like that. Okay. So to me, let's say that that's a very common shape for me to use because I've drawn it so many times. It'll always be somewhere I can put things into. And it's a very simple thing. I can always, from a profile, call halfway and you put the ear behind that. Very simple. So a full profile is a much more beautiful thing to draw. It's very clear to see and it's dramatic. It's a really beautiful thing. And it's no coincidence that you'll get movie stars like I have here, not on command, but if we really want to see the beauty of Sophia Loren, I mean, that's just gorgeous, isn't it? Look at that profile. And it's no coincidence the photographer working for Vogue or one of the big slicks said, I want a full profile because anything else is not as beautiful. Look at the architecture of Sophia Loren. It's incredible. And by today's standards, they'd say get your nose fixed or something silly like that. When the entire beauty was about those slight differences, those tiny little differences than the next person. Just an outstanding ideal right there. So I'm thinking that all the time. So even if I start with this, which is really the gateway to anything, you can see how many times I'm changing that nose around there. I'll often do a live class where I'll draw the male head and then change it to female head. I'll do that all the time. And I'll have a female model sitting there as I do it. And it's just the slightest changes to coming off of that bridge. They're going to make all the difference to that drawing. But notice how once again, that orbicularosaurus from this side here, notice how we have to think of it as a ball all the time to fit teeth into. We have to be able to get teeth in there. And this is quite voluminous in there.
That's got to be one of the most confounding parts of the face to me, I think, is that.
It is. And because we're used to just doing that, which isn't enough, right? That's not enough. So the second, I mean, I could do that and do this. And now we've got what just happened.
Right.
You know, it's okay for a comic book villain or a strange character. But the second we do that and we put the lip here, oh, yes, I see. That's going to be a lip, right? So we got to understand that there's teeth in there and tiny little things. There's a million things. That's what my new course is about, the power of osmosis. It's the tiny little things that you're not taught from a book, the in-between, the tiny little things that there wasn't enough time in school for, there wasn't enough time in university for. There's not even enough time in a professional studio for, because it's going to take you 20 years for an old pro to say, oh, you do it this way. And you go, I didn't even know what the question was.
You do again, it that way. That speaks to that, all those little minor small details coming together produce the finished thing, right? And like, I find as I progress in my drawing, in my career, coming across these little detail things that I never even noticed before and incorporating them in, and then all of a sudden somehow it looks better, and you would have never thought like, oh, it looks better. It doesn't. It's missing this element because it's such a tiny little piece, and I think, I don't know, that's where the sort of real high level artists are at, right? They've incorporated in so many of those little details that you can't even, the untrained eye doesn't even know why the thing looks as good as it does, right?
Yeah. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I was talking about this in depth. Yeah. And I was talking about this in depth the other day. When I walked into a professional studio, I thought I was the bee's knees. I thought I was brilliant. And I walked into a professional studio, and boy, was I humbled. Was I humbled? Sure, I'm brilliant if I spend all day. These guys were throwing out artworks 5 a day. And I was going, you know, it's frenzy in here. They were whistling. It wasn't a frenzy to them. And then I realized they could do it because they'd done it so many times in a certain way. And right down to technique, you know? Anything at all. You didn't even know yourself. Like I'm airbrushing, there's a big greasy spot and the paint won't adhere. What happened? Did you not clean it down with lighter fluid first? What? Do you know what I mean? There's a million things. It's impossible to know that. It's like Rumpelstiltskin. What's his name? Who found out that lighter fluid worked in an art environment? Somebody did. You went out into the cigarette shop, they got lighter fluid, cleaned their board, never a greasy mark ever again. So a million things. I mean, that's just one out of a trillion things that you learn as you meet more minds. It's like a big hive mind.
And again, that's the fun of it.
And that's the fun of it too. You know, here's another thing. If you learn the hard way, it sticks harder. So you go, that was really painful. And you don't want that pain again. Whereas a lot of very slick stuff going on, where it's so slick that if you try to replicate it, you can't. And you just think, I'm not good enough. And so that guy is just a savant. It's someone that can do that and I can't do it. When really you can do it. Because I didn't know how to do anything, and I could do it. And people often cite passion. They come into the Dragon's Den, they say, I've got a passion for it. And you can hear in their voice, it's just spiel. But I really did have a passion for drawing and making marks. And I didn't care if it was bad or good. I just really enjoyed making the marks. And so I did lots of cartoons because it's hard to fault them.
Hmm.
And then when I started to do realistic stuff, I started to feel the pain of criticism because everyone knows what realism looks like. And for me, I had to start learning how to draw. And that was a painful experience. And it was pain heaped upon pain because I didn't know what I didn't know. And 1 year in a studio, and I am 10 times the artist I was when I walked into that studio with all of those people to thank. And I still thank them to this day. It's amazing. And now the lineage is, it's continued.
Hmm.
People are learning from me and people are learning from you, John. And, it's a wonderful thing to grow art. So that's why it's good to be here. And we can say the loss of the studio system, where 20 people would sit there and learn from each other, is gone, but not entirely. We have this.
Yeah.
We have this moment here. Even if it's just a brief 50 minutes or 2 hours, it's here. But it's finding out where's the quality of it. Because there's lots of things that aren't good. There's so many things that you have to troll through to get what the treasure is. So bravo, John, for coming on this platform and bringing that knowledge out into the world. Because
Well,
you're
it's
very good.
exciting for
Yeah.
me because I get to learn with everybody. Like
Yeah,
we all learn together, which is great. And that's the studio thing, right? Like
that's the studio
people
environment.
together feeding off each other and
Yeah.
kind of being inspired by each other is exciting.
Yeah, and people that don't know as much as you can teach you stuff you don't know
Yeah.
all the time. Because there is a time when you get a little bit careful, and then you get a little bit slick, and then you get a little bit afraid to be anything else. And so you repeat the tropes that worked. And then a student comes in and they just blast away there and they hit gold. Gold that you wouldn't have hit because
Hmm.
you were still doing the same pose over and over because it was a good pose.
Hmm.
But how does it look just slightly turned? And if they ask you a question, how can I turn this slightly? You don't want the answer to be just don't do it. Go, here's how.
Right.
And that's what I do all day. I say, what's the hardest way? Not what's the hardest way to do this. What's the challenge for me here? Give me a foreshortened figure. I said it to my model once, Elena. I says, Elena, give me the hardest thing I can draw. And she contorted it into some kind of demon.
Hmm.
And the class all turned away in horror. They went, nobody can draw that. And it was wonderful. It gave me a chance to fall on my face
Yeah,
and
it's
come back
it's
up again with something really interesting.
it's fun. And Tiny Dragon just says you've got to embrace being quote unquote bad at something before you can be good at it, whatever that means, right? Like
Yeah.
you gotta
And there's no such thing.
jump
Yeah.
into the deep end. I think is also more fun. Like
Yeah.
drawing stuff that you're afraid to draw or not sure of how to draw. For me, the motto is always turn and face the strange. It's the David Bowie
Yeah.
quote. And I had a
Yeah.
professor in college who told us that right before graduation. He says, "When you're an artist, you got to turn and face the strange. It's where the growth is. It's where the interesting stuff is. Go where it's uncomfortable."
100%.
And that's
100%. Well, let's take David Bowie in point. So David Bowie I saw some footage. He's walking around somewhere in Venice or something, way back in the 70s, right? And he's walking beside a guy who just had a massive album, and I can't remember his name. That's part of the story. Can't remember his name. Everyone knew the other guy,
mhm,
and they didn't know David Bowie, right? They can't remember that guy anymore because he had a big David Frampton, it was Peter Frampton. So he had a big hit where he
mhm,
used a gimmick, which was a voice distorter. So when he sang, Cher went on to do it later, and she had a big hit with it too because it just seems so fresh. So he'd speak into it and it would go wah 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 instead of a voice. And so he sold one of the biggest selling records of all time. Nobody knew who David Bowie was. They were all asking him for autographs while David had a smoke. Now, David Bowie always embraced the difference. I
mhm.
saw footage of him, and he was with all of these he surrounded himself with great people. Another thing to do as well. Never try to be king of the hill. Is there anyone that's better that I can grow from? So you bring these musicians in, and they were so slick and so great Motown artists, and they were brilliant. And he says, "Can we just slow that beat down a bit? Just maybe take one of those drum beats out." And it was very hard for the guy to do because he's doing the same thing all the time and he's really great at it. And he just took that beat outside of the beat. And it became one of the biggest songs of that year. It was just an amazing sound that you were expecting a beat and it didn't happen. And then it came and you went, wow. It was just, it was a thrill. It was a really exciting thing. It was, it'll come to me in a bit. I can actually hear the music, but I can't
It's the
remember
opposite of
the name.
cliche.
Yeah, it's the
And yeah,
opposite.
to me, cliche is the enemy. I try to avoid it as much as I can.
Yeah. And you can look at today. I think the best musical group since the Beatles is Radiohead. Just when you think they're going to do something, they do something different, and
Hmm.
it's really incredible. But I can cite their music back to King Crimson and stuff. We're talking about a different thing here now, but it's still art. It's
Yeah,
still
yeah,
art where
it's
you
absolutely
go,
still.
let's change it a little bit. Now, on this drawing here, look at the difference between this one and the one that John had. Who did this one, John?
This is done by someone called Pointifable.
Pointifable.
Yeah,
This is what I love about
you can
art.
call him
This
Point.
is Point. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Point and John, if you put their art together, we know who did it. We
Hmm.
know who was Point. We know who was John, right? That is what art should be for me. But here's what I would say. I love it. I love the mystery of it. It has a tone. It has a feeling. I mean, they're massive successes. Massive successes. It has all of that. If I was to say, if I bring my method into it and say, here's what I would do, I wonder, Point, if you would like to try it and see that next time you do this, that this abstract background here looks a little bit like the head. Now, it could be that it is the shadow of the head, but because we don't see bricks or anything like that, then I would say to myself, well, if it is only abstract, there it makes sense. If it is only abstract, I would change that shape to be different from this shape here. And so you have an asymmetrical difference. That's all I would say on that piece. I would probably take the edges and make them less rough, but that's not a given. That's just for this piece. That's what I'm just thinking on this piece, that we've got all this softness and then these hard edges. It can work, but that's what I'm feeling here, that the abstract part I would probably mess around with a little bit more. Let's just take it actually. Just grab a hold of it and see if it's true. Because remember, there's no rules. There's absolutely no rules at all. And what I'm describing here, you'll probably hear me contradict in a different piece because everything's different.
Hmm.
I'll just grab that and I'll just warp it a little bit. See, it's always going to be that shape. So I've cut it out. But I would probably say, just thinking how much of this, let's just fill it all in. So there's a whole different vibe there, right? It's a whole different vibe. It feels like there's a big dark room that he's in. And that's quite terrifying because now he's a small component in this big vast void. That's a whole different story. That's a different story based on an abstract. So abstract's very powerful. You can do anything with an abstract shape. Let me just take a look in here. Like, look at the abstract shape around her head. What does it mean? Well, it looks like she's thinking, doesn't it? Looks like she's startled. So it's almost a comic book
Like an
device. You see
animation.
that? Or animation. So abstract's really friendly if you can take it and definitely use the figure itself to get the flow of the abstract. But see if you can just change the flow a little bit. I mean, that's getting very close to her shoulder shape there, but it's not exactly outside her shoulder shape. So it doesn't look like a shadow. So lots of abstract, but see if you can veer off so that it doesn't look like a cutout version of what it is that the figure is doing, unless it's meant to be a shadow. That's the only thing I would say on that. You can see all these abstract shapes here. Why did I choose them? The reason I'm putting this vast gray in there, it's just so that the back of the head doesn't just suddenly become this sharp end to it. That's all that is. So it fades a little bit like Rembrandt would fade a figure into the background. It's just so we can focus back into the face again. So if it was a sharp back end to this head, it would be fighting attention. It'd be fighting for attention with the front edge of the face, which is much more important. So I want you to look at that blind eye. So if we had a big sharp back to it here, we wouldn't be looking at that eye. We'd be ping pong back and forth on those two things. Abstract is really powerful. Same with that beard. It's no longer a beard, it's just an abstract shape, but we still read it as a beard. So another thing with her, you can see that I always put a little corona around it. That's straight from Sargent. So if we school ourselves in all the greats and ask why are they so great, rather than just copy them, ask why did they do that? And I asked myself that a million times. I said, why is that? And then I went out and looked at someone's hair and I saw that golden glow, even on dark hair. I saw that auburn glow. And I went, wow, that's the human eye. So we see too many photographs is the problem. The likes of Dean Cornwall didn't. They saw a huge, incredible Californian light that I didn't have as a kid. You've got it, John. I have it now. It's very hard for me to draw hard shadows for a long time because I didn't come from that environment. I came from
Right.
an overcast sky. So it depends what you do. But a bright day is a very crisp idea. And if you want romance in it, you're going to have to do something to soften up. And now Robert McGinnis didn't do soft edges. He did once again soft value. Look at that foot down there. You see it? Right down in this corner. Whoops. Let me get my brush back again. Let's look at the different decisions that Robert McGinnis made here. First of all, he made his figures 10 heads high. He did that. I mean, that guy, he's probably 11 heads high. Yeah, that's a hard edge, but because the color is so close to the street itself, it becomes a soft edge, even though it's a hard edge. Look at the corona in here. It's unfinished scrubbed art. See that?
Hmm.
It just helps that not to look like it's a cutout figure. Everything's so hard edged in his work because he used egg tempera. I don't know why he did.
Hmm.
It's one of the hardest things to master. It's what the Sistine Chapel is painted with. I have no idea why he used egg tempera. Acrylic was available, even though I don't like acrylic. He could have got these done faster, but when you master something well, you can make anything go fast. So he's working with egg tempera, one of the slowest things. It's what the Egyptians used as well before before they discovered oil binders. They used egg to bind. Very weird. Look also in here. Look at all the different colors in that shadow. See that? An untrained eye would just put a gray in there. He's put blues and oranges, the complementary colors in
Hmm.
there. Look at the light of it. Look at that. Absolutely gorgeous. Total master of what he did. Working with one of the hardest things to paint with. His brushes must have been ruined. He's scrubbing everything in. There he is again. Just sensational. Robert McGinnis. What a master. Of course, Frank. But let's get back into it here. So I would say the point. What do you think, point,
I
on your
think.
next strategy?
Oh, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, you would have to ask what the story is.
Mhm.
Point, what's the story? What's the story you had in mind for this guy?
I think Point's probably in bed now because it's late
Oh,
where
is
he
he?
is. Yeah, so I think he'll see this
Yeah,
on the VOD. He'll see this on the replay. But this
yeah.
is a self portrait.
Oh, is it? Be
Yeah.
interesting to hear what his idea was. Yeah, we all are good at drawing our self-portraits as well. You can see me in a lot of my paintings. Like for instance, and this is a good segue too, and why it's so important to learn how to draw. So let's have a look here. Let's see here. Let's open that.
So this one's a self portrait.
Yeah, I look exactly like that. So I had to pose for Conan without going to the gym. And so I had to learn anatomy. Well, I already knew anatomy, so it was no big call for me. So I painted, I posed for it. And then I had to change the face, I had to change the muscles to be more buff. The hands didn't need any change to them at all. And I'm in pretty good shape, but I'm not in that shape there. So I had to understand how muscles grow bigger. And it's not just a simple case of making a balloon for your bicep. You really have to start thinking about when you move one thing, everything else has to move. And like for instance, see the striation in here of flesh against flesh? That had to be popped. I had to add more line in there to get that idea that the pectoralis is so big that it's pressured against the arm itself. And at the time, I had to get my wife to go and pose for the hand because I didn't know where to put her hand halfway through it. And I said, just put your hand up here on this little pole that I have a look at, and just painted it on the fly like that. So learn how to draw
Mhm.
is what you have to do. And then I have to put the pressure points around that hand because that didn't exist. That was just an arm to begin with. But there's so much you have to be able to do to why drawing is king. If you get in a bind, you can get out of it, no matter what the medium,
Mhm.
digital, paint, doesn't matter what. Now, who did this one,
This was
John?
by Plumsink, who was one of the comic artists who
And
was
is
commenting
he in
earlier.
the chat?
Yep, he's in chat right now.
Yeah. So what was his name again?
Plumsink.
Plumsink. Plumsink. What did you find difficult? By the way, I love it. I think it's great.
And it's interesting too because he usually doesn't work in this style,
Yeah.
and he did this specifically for the draw over, and kind of got
Oh,
a
really?
little bit out of his regular comfort zone, which is really cool to see.
Okay.
I was really pleasantly surprised at myself. I've seen a lot of his
Well,
work over
why?
the years.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
what's the difference? What's it?
Well,
How does it
he does
change?
more he does like I'd say existentialist philosophical
Oh,
comic strips
we're not kidding.
like several panel, like 3 panel, 4 panel maybe. And
Oh, sequential stuff. Yeah.
yeah, and like trippy backgrounds. Oh, always colored pencil, I think.
Yeah.
But he went more realist for this one. And
Yeah. Well, I think that's what's so fresh about it as well. That it's pencil. I mean, you never. I mean, have I ever seen it in comic books? I'm not sure I ever have. But what I love about it is the shape. So the shape design, for instance, the hair,
mhm.
this, and then that block,
That block
especially
underneath it, that thing that
that
struck out at
block,
me at first when I
that
first saw
sells
it.
the whole that
Yeah, I
sells the
love
whole
that
thing.
block.
Me too. I love that block. And I love the shapes of the blocks, you know? I love this hard edge. So much to like. I love that hard edge coming down. Because most people just draw hair too whimsical.
Hmm.
And you can't do that. I mean, whimsical's fine. It's absolutely fine. Depends what you're doing. But hair is a living thing. You've got to really make something of it every time. See how we get this flow going on. You got to always have a flow in your hair. And it's a good tip if you're getting bogged down and things are getting too structural. Just go up to the hair and have fun up there. Let's see the difference between structure and gesture here, because this is one of my favorite moments here of doing this. You know, you can have your own favorite moments, but you can see that nose. Anyone can do that. It's just a triangle. See it? It's just a triangle. And I'm about to put a tip on it. There we go. And I'm going to put a round underneath it. Now, anyone can do that. Once you're in the ballpark, you got, now this is the moment here. Is it? I'm waiting for it because I love drawing noses. I'm going to come down for the bridge of that nose at some point, and it's going to be just a difference of millimeters to get finesse. But it started with a triangle. Anyone can do that. Come on, Patrick. People are waiting. Oh, I did it just when. Oh, that must be there. We'll just wait for it. Yeah, it was just after that too. Eyelashes, you can make them as long as you want. I always was of the idea that women's makeup looked at its absolute peak in the 1960s, 1950s, around that period. So I based that, my idea of how I paint fantasy figures, which is another course I do, based on that idea of 1960s, 1950s minimal makeup.
Hmm.
I think what was so great about it is it emphasized things. It emphasized the eyes, the eyebrows. It wasn't about, there we go. It wasn't about covering up blemishes. It was just about enhancing what was already there, cheeks, cheekbones, all that kind of thing. So you saw that. There's the
Yeah.
triangle and there's the nose. Once you've got a boundary, it's so easy to come off that. One of the trickiest things of all is drawing the lips. And that little tip of coming down from the eyeball to find this corner has held me in such great stead over the years because it's so hard as you get further turning the figure more and more. It's very hard to know where to put that end of that lip,
Hmm.
but easily come down from the eyeball for
Yeah,
it.
those anchors are really helpful, right?
Yeah,
Having
you were talking about them earlier. Yeah, plumb lines.
yeah, plumb lines. Yeah, they're not plums ink, plumb
Yeah.
lines. Yeah.
Yeah. And the great thing about them is you don't you can defy gravity and say, well, my
Hmm.
plumb line's going to come down at a
Yeah,
45
right.
degree angle, or it's going to go as a horizontal. You can throw them anywhere. Look how simple that face is. There's practically no interest to it all. It's just like somebody's sister right there. Pardon the all sisters. But you know, I always think of my sisters as having no makeup on, just out of bed, and they're in their pajamas and they're grumpy. And so that's what that face looks like to me. Just like looks like a sister. And then they get all sophisticated, don't they, as they go to the debutante's ball, and then they can become this, you know? And they're all just very subtle changes. And it's mostly to do with the arch of the eyebrow, the lift of the eye, a million tiny little things, the point of the nose, all of that stuff, how to lay that pencil down. And even just there, to see that right on that little point, see how that's quite hard? That's a big choice. A lot of people wouldn't do that. and I feel it needed it. Just need to have that one little thing, just for that one drawing. So at the end of the day, you've got to go, what does it need? And use your instinct and go, boy, jeez. And don't go, I don't want to take the chance of spoiling it. It's just a drawing. And that was one of the most liberating things I ever heard. It's just a drawing. Now stop crying about it and put that line in and see what it looks like. And if it's no good, you can do another drawing. It's only a drawing. So, did we hear back from the man himself?
He
What was
says that
tricky?
our opinion of it is higher than his, and it was slow going at first, but he got into it.
Yeah. Well, I love the asymmetry of it. And if I was to say, here's the trouble about giving someone advice on method, because it could be the ruination of their style. Now, what I love about it is it does have asymmetry. This seems to be, it needs more. You know what I mean? It feels like it needs more like that to go with this here. But it has suddenly lost interest to me
Hmm.
because it no longer has, it's getting closer to what the camera would do. So it doesn't have that lovely little slant that screams out, an artist did this and said it's done. And so for me, that question, when is an artwork finished, is always the same answer for me. It's when the artist stops drawing. That's when it's finished. Regardless of whether you go, it needs more detail, it doesn't. When the artist is finished, that's when the drawing is done. So I can show you method. I can say we're seeing no orbicularis here at all. So we should see some kind of semblance of shadow shapes in there. But once again, it's killing the art because it's adding things that aren't necessary for this style. That's the tricky thing about it. This mouth feels like it's straight across like that. It doesn't feel like it's going around that corner that we talk about. And therein we have to lay low and say, are we talking academia? Or are we talking soul? And if it's academia, I can teach you that stuff if you want to be more realistic. But don't lose the soul of this. Bring it back later again if you want and put it into the style of it. It's amazing what you can do. You can have some of this in an academic style and some of it not. And people will know the difference. But that's what I love about it. Excuse me. Like, for instance, this is correct. If I say correct, right? If we were in academic school, this is correct. That's correct, and that's correct. This is not, because it has that very simple idea of a fish that you often see in books, where it's just an almond shape, which is not the shape of the eye, because it flattens here and it goes up fast there. That's what an eye really looks like. And this one overlaps like that. But if we did that with both eyes, it would lose its charm. The charm is gone.
Yeah, you were
But I
talking earlier
believe if
about that asymmetry, right?
the asymmetry is the charm of it. But let's say you were working for not an independent publisher. An independent publisher would love this. But if you went to Marvel or DC, they want something else. So it depends what you want. If you wanted to work for Marvel and DC, then you'd have to learn a lot of method. Have to learn how to draw. Uh, an idea of a structural form that turns in space. I mean, like Mickey Mouse, for instance. Mickey Mouse, his ears were always, it's funny. I never noticed until someone pointed it out. Mickey Mouse's ears were always like this, right? Even from the top. So if he's from well, let's take that out of the equation to
Right.
start. No matter what way he turned, his ears looked like that.
Hmm.
And then someone said once to Fred Moore, who was just a brilliant illustrator, they says, what if you saw Mickey from the top? And he said, who would draw Mickey from the top? That was his answer. To him, the ears look great like that, and there's no way he's ever going to draw Mickey from the top. And the reason I say even from the top is because I remember a scene where he was drawn from the top. So it was an overhead camera shot. They were still the same ears. He never changed them. It looked weird though. I gotta say it looked weird. But Marvel would need you to understand the head from every angle
Hmm.
as being a structural dimensional thing. But that's why I love this because it's not Marvel.
Yeah, there's
It took
there's not Marvel is way more interesting
yeah,
oftentimes than Marvel, right?
yeah. Yeah, well, look at I often get confused with courier service. UPA.
Right,
UPA
right.
United.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, United something artists, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They were the remnants of the Disney studios. And so what happened was that Disney had become so slick in their technique that you could tell a Disney movie. So Disney movies were 24 frames a second, and then Saturday morning television movies, cartoons, were 12 frames a second because they didn't have the budget for twice as many drawings, so they did them in 12. And it created a style. It created the Flintstones. And even with the 12 frames a second, half the work, they still didn't have the budget. And so they had to make things work better. So less movement. So when Barney talked or Fred talked, it was just their mouths moving. And every once in a while, they'd do a little shrug to show that, it's not just a mouth. And so that's how they worked it out. And when Fred ran, he was just completely straight and only his legs turned.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they put music to it. And we all loved it because it was just so on Disney-like. You went, this is hilarious. He just leans back and off he goes like a machine. And it was just so fresh.
Hmm.
And so when Disney broke the unions, they had to find work somewhere else, and he went to UPA and created some of the most amazing animated art in history. Really incredible stuff that won Oscars. It's
Hmm.
just sensational. They took Picasso and brought it into cartoons.
Right.
Same here. Like if I go back and say, if we learn method, it doesn't have to be rigid. There's a ton of method in here, but I keep it lively with a million decisions as I go. I never sacrificed my style. It was always my style, but it got more and more sophisticated as I
Hmm.
went along. And there's a million choices in here. Look at the soft edge there. Just want to dissect it. Look at the soft edge in here where the hair seems to have a hard edge compared to the extra soft edge there.
Hmm.
But both of them are soft edges. See that? But one's softer than the other. So now we're working with soft edges that look hard by what's next to them. So whatever you place next to it is a huge statement. It's a massive statement. The value in here is so heightened. The 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 distance between the mid-tone and the darkest tone have been shortened. So we're going dark tone, little bit of mid, and then we're going to the high tone. In here, they're almost together. So the darkest tone and the lightest tone are almost the same. And the highest tone in that background there, I'm drawing on the layer. So if I sample just here, whoops, if I sample there, which looks white,
Hmm.
see that? Against the white, it's darker. See that? But it looks white next to the dark. Where if I sample the white here, like that, and put it next to that, it's blazing white. See that? So this white here looks twice as white as that white. And it's just an illusion.
Right.
Everything's an
It's
illusion.
what's in its neighborhood, right?
It's neighborhood, yeah. So
Hmm.
look at how much you can do. I mean, look at this lost edge here. Look at how it glows. You see that? So we've taken the highest highlight in the entire drawing, which, by the way, is still this paper. It's the same color, but look how bright that looks
Hmm.
compared to here. It's the same thing. So we take that and we say nothing's brighter than that. And that's a choice by me. So if I want that to sing out like that, nothing can be brighter.
Right.
Nothing. And then I gradate all the tones around
And
that.
then
I
you
make sure
need
that,
discipline to make sure that that stays that way, right?
yeah, that's
It's
right. Well,
so
you
easy
soon
to
find
to
Bob.
to slide past that.
Yeah.
Everything's
Yeah. 'Cause-
everything's not lighter than that, except maybe this, except maybe that, except
yeah.
and then it's
Well, you
just
can,
it's all over.
yeah. Well, that's it. You go, that's such a success. Why should I just have it once? I'll put it
Yeah.
up here, here, and here, and here, and here, and here. And before you know it, she's got dandruff. It's just not, it's not interesting anymore because we're looking everywhere. It has lost its power. See that? So there's a million ways. Well, they skin a cat, they say,
Hmm.
but there's 1,000 micro choices in there. Made over time. You can see the shadow of the eyelashes. They die. See that? They just die there. When I was younger, I'd have probably closed that off and it would have looked awful. But just looking at life and how things are, how shadows, especially shadows, just go out into the bright sunshine and just look at shadows.
Hmm.
And they're your friends because nearly every shadow I have in every drawing is made up
Yeah,
because I know it's
Crochet was
going to
talking
add
earlier
power.
in chat about the importance of drawing plein air and from life. And
Yeah.
you say that a lot as well. You talk about the things that I can see that the camera can't, and I think that
Well,
noticing how the shadows works, that's another one.
well, I'll tell you what, John, I felt complete guilt there because I have never painted in plein air. ever.
Oh.
And I felt the guilt. See that, you know? And I saw a student do it the other day, a student that I've taught,
It's time.
and I went, it's time. I have to do that. I have to do that. It's such a joy.
Because you draw from life all the time with the model,
I draw from
but
life
not
all the time.
out and about in the world.
Not pain. You know what it is? It's just laziness. Be, I can't be bothered to get off my big fat ass.
But you can be
Get
bothered to
get in the
hire a
car.
model, set up your lighting, set up your system, get your props. You can be bothered to do all that.
Yeah, but I don't have to pull flies
But
out of
stepping
oil paint.
outdoors.
Yeah, I don't have to pull flies out of oil paint, and I don't have to, like James Gurney does, is
Mm-hmm.
put on a uniform that says the art police, and go and he actually goes off and sections off a part of the supermarket
Mm-hmm.
and draws at the supermarket, and no one questions him because everyone believes in a uniform. And if you've cordoned off, and you can cordon anything off you like until the cops come and get you. It's hilarious. That's good fun, that now, isn't it? So there you go. I think I've said everything that needs said. If there's any questions, John, just let me know.
Any final questions? And Crochet also says you're never too young to start a new habit. I think
It's true.
that's
Yeah.
yeah. Breaking all the bad habits and turning them into good habits, for me, has been part of the artistic journey. Like
Yeah.
it's just a
100%.
constantly I trying to identify what are the bad habits. How can I judo them into good habits, break
Yeah.
them in and refresh them and turn them into actually helpful things to do.
Yeah. And I have a saying that's always in my head too. No matter what you're up against, what's the upside of it? All the
Hmm.
time. Let's say you run out of red. You go, oh, can't paint beyond. Try purple.
Hmm.
What's the upside of that red? Well, you're gonna have to choose a different kind of color. And it could be the change that you really didn't even see coming that made all the difference. So I always say to them, what's the upside of this? What
That's
is the
right.
upside? Every time. And there's always an upside. You just got to ask the question every single time.
Yeah,
Now, before,
the not the unforeseen consequences, but the unforeseen the benefits, right?
yeah, what are the benefits of it?
Hmm.
I mean, usually, I mean, if it wasn't for newsprint, if I had to buy really expensive paper for everything I did, and I used to be like that. I knew a lot of artists like that. We'd go out and buy the most expensive brushes because we thought the brush would do the work for us.
Hmm.
And then we ruined really expensive brushes because all we needed was a synthetic brush because we weren't good enough to use the sable. So I ruined so many sable brushes. And then when I started using the synthetic brushes because the sables were all ruined, I learned to use them so well that when I pick up a sable, it is the slowest thing in the world and slows me down to a crawl. I went, you know what? I'm never going to use a sable unless it's absolutely necessary because they're a pain in the ass. And so when I paint like that picture of Conan there, not a sable brush inside. The only time you'll probably see me use a sable on is a woman's face just to get the tone softer. And that's it. So there was what was the upside?
Hmm.
The upside is now my brushes are cheaper, they're more robust, and they have an edge to them that a sable can't hold because the sable is too soft. The minute it touches the canvas, it bends.
And you're
A
not
synthetic,
beholden to your materials either, right?
that's right.
If you find
And
yourself
also,
out and about and you don't have that one material, there's no excuse, right? You don't need it.
that's right, you don't need it. Yeah, can I do a little spruik before I forget?
Yeah.
Because I'm having trouble filling my course for the first time. And I think the reason for it is the way the economics of the world has just shifted. So at the minute, I have very few people in my class. So if anyone wants to join me next Saturday, the Anatomy of Style online workshop, I'm taking it worldwide for the first time. So I'm doing two sessions. One is for Europe and beyond. So at let's say, because you remember you did it with me, John, and we were on the same timeline.
Yeah, I
So
had to get up
John,
early.
yeah, that's right, you're a little bit ahead.
Just a
But
little
you
early, yeah.
basically Yeah, but basically you're up here and I'm down there, so we're
Hmm.
near enough on the same timeline. What I generally do is Los Angeles time over here. And as it starts to go across here, basically everyone in America can come in for the 4 p.m. But once we started to go across here, I had a really amazing student there in my last class, and he was up till 5 a.m. in the morning. And so I've decided to do two sessions. So the next one's two sessions, and it starts at 8 o'clock in the UK. And then it's going to be most of Europe is going to be before 12 12 a.m. before lunchtime. And then the rest of the world over in this direction will still have daytime. So that's what I'm trialing out. But it's been really difficult to fill the class, I think, because of the way everyone's worried about the economy. I
Yeah.
think it's just terrified everyone. But I don't know. But anyway,
Well,
if you
honestly,
join, it's
I gotta say, I did the class like you said. It was extremely valuable. It's what, 4 weeks,
yeah,
4 or 5 weeks,
it's 4 weeks and,
4 weeks
and then a
plus
follow-up,
the secret bonus follow up.
a secret bonus follow-up in 6 months. Yeah.
And it's
Get a party hat.
every week you get a week of videos to follow and draw along with, and then on the Saturday you meet up in the group meets up, you know, online like this, and you
Yeah.
basically get personalized Patrick looking at your work, uh, telling you about it, telling what you know what you can do, how you can do it, and then
Yeah.
you go back and then you draw some more and then come back the following week. All of his
Yeah.
prices are in Australian
Ooh.
dollars, so if you're used to USD, it's a
Yeah.
steal as well. But I recommend the course very
Yeah.
much, and all of Patrick's things, all his various things. Do it all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry there,
you
John.
won't
I
regret
came
it.
I clicked on it there and I thought, are we going to shut down?
Uh-oh.
It was nothing.
Well,
It
we're
was
at the
no
end of
big deal.
stream now, so if we do, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there you go. If anyone goes on to my web store, pjartworks.com,
And the
it'd be
link is
great to see.
there in a chat there. So we just had the
Is
link.
it?
The link just came up in our chat. So click that. Yeah,
Yeah, it'd be great
if
to
you're
see.
trying to get better at your drawing.
All right. But it's been a pleasure anyway, John. Is there any last questions?
I think that's it. We got a lot of thank yous,
Thank you.
and a thank you from me as well. Always good to chat with you, Patrick, and looking forward to the mnemonics course too.
Yeah, the power of osmosis. Yeah,
Yeah,
Proco well, they've launched it now. It's actually
is it
over on
up?
Proco now.
All right. Well, I gotta wait.
Yeah,
I gotta wait for their when they do one of their sales, their President's Day sale or whatever.
well, they have it now. It's a 20% off sale right
20% off.
now
All right, I'm in.
because it's a pre-order. So I don't know how long the pre-order goes for, but if you go over to Proco, it's a pre-order now for 20% off.
All right,
Power of osmosis, 15 hours. Really proud of it. Because you
fantastic.
know, I always say to myself, what would young Patrick need right now? What would he need if I was 22?
Hmm.
And that's what I need. I needed all that stuff. That's why I made that course. This was the missing link between the wizardry course and the fantasy female figure course. Because I did it in reverse, John. I did the I did the advanced course
Hmm.
first, and then everyone was saying, "Well, what do I need to do prerequisite for that?" So there it's there now.
Yeah,
There's the two
I took
courses.
the advanced course first, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad I took all of
Oh,
them.
good.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
all right, Patrick. Thank you
All right,
very
John.
much once again.
All right, John. Thanks very much. Thanks everyone for tuning in. It's been a real pleasure. And thanks for, I mean, that's a big call, people putting their artwork up to be critiqued. So thank you guys for being the brave sort that will grow from that. You know, I think that's my final word as well, John, is never wait till you think you're good enough to show your work. Show your work immediately because artists are very giving people and they will help you along the way. I have never seen it. It's very rare to find aggressive artists. It's not completely
Yeah,
impossible, but generally you ask a question and they answer it. You know, they want to tell you what's easier,
I
what way to
agree.
do it.
Yeah,
They
artists are
want
people
to.
too.
They're people too. Well, end with that. All right, John. Good
All
luck. I'll
right.
go get my lunch.
Take care,
All
Patrick.
right. You too. See you all. Bye bye.